انا مخضوض شويه، يعني مخضوض جامد بصراحه. انا ما توقعتش العدد الكبير قوي ده. في البدايه لازم اشكركم كلكم على وقتكم وعلى مجهودكم، على ان انتم شرفتونا النهارده في مايكروسوفت. اللونش بتاع
حد ينزل محسن،
اليوزر جروب
نزل محسن.
دوت نتورك يا ريمون ولا دوت نتورك. انا كان لسه في ايفنت بتاع الكاتنج ايدج كلاب بتاع اي تي وركس، ويمكن الكلمات اللي انا هقولها البسيطه مينلي هي نفس الكلام اللي انا قلته في الايفنت بتاع كاتنج ايدج بتاع اي تي وركس. معرفش كان في حد من هنا حاضر؟ على فكره بس في البدايه، هو النهارده اللي منظم الموضوع ده كله وترتيبات الباصز والمكان واللي عزم ستيفن I'm sorry I'm talking in Arabic.
I understand.
اللي منظم الموضوع ده كله هو ريمون والتيم طبعا، كل الناس اللي معاه في اكيد طبعا في اليوزر جروب. في كام واحد دلوقتي في اليوزر جروب؟ كتير. كم واحد الاول شارك في تنظيم القعده النهارده؟
اللي شارك في تنظيم القعده.
طب ممكن اللي شارك في تنظيم القعده يقف
ايدك ازرع.
ممكن
مش حد ولا ايه؟
ممكن نقف.
اتفضل ضلموا علينا عشان
طب ممكن نسقف لهم بس يا سيدي. احنا عاده احنا في مايكروسوفت
عامل لي فيها ستيفن جيرارد.
عندنا في مايكروسوفت لما بنحب ننظم الايفنت
الحياه من ورا عندكم. لما بنيجي ننظم اي ايفنت زي الايفنت اللي بتاع النهارده، بالنسبه لنا احنا في مايكروسوفت والله عيب،
الموضوع بيبقى معقد جدا، وبنقعد ندخل نفسنا في لوجيستكس ودعاوي وانفيتيشنز مطبوعه ومواعيد، والموضوع بيبقى كومبليكيتد جدا. يعني يمكن الاسنس او من اهم الحاجات في فكره اليوزر جروب السمبلسيتي. احنا في الاخر كلنا النهارده بتاعي موجودين مع بعض علشان احنا وير انترستد في تكنولوجي او اثنين او ثلاثه، وعايزين نسمع اكتر ونتعرف اكتر على التكنولوجي ونشير النولج بتاعنا كلنا مع بعض. فاعتقد كل ما التنظيمات وكل ما الترتيبات للاجتماعات او الاعداد اللي زي دي كانت ابسط وكانت اسهل، كل ما ده هيساعد الناس اللي في اليوزر جروب على الاستمراريه. فبرضه انا بعتذر لان المكان مش كفايه، في ناس واقفه ورا، فبعتذر لكم بشده لان احنا فعلا ما كناش متوقعين العدد ده. الحاجه الثانيه اللي كنت يعني برضه عايز اكد عليها، اللي كنت اتكلمت فيها المره اللي فاتت في كاتنج ايدج، بالتالي النوع ده من الاكتيفيتي في مصر، فكره الاوف لاين يوزر جروبس، الناس اللي بتتقابل on a regular basis عشان يتكلموا على تكنولوجي، علشان يستفيدوا من معلومات بعض ويشاروا النولج ويتعلموا حاجات جديده. النوع ده مش موجود بكثره في مصر، يعني مش موجود منه كتير. انا شخصيا ما سمعتش غير عن يمكن 3 4 ناس بينظموا الحاجات دي. الجروب بتاع محمد طنة ومحمد حسام، كل الناس اللي في الديمو داي بتاع سيلفر كي، شغل الاي تي وركس بتعمله دلوقتي ريمون. ستيل انا شايف ان العدد ده كومبيرد بعدد الديفلوبرز والحاجه اللي احنا بنطمح ليها في مصر اكتيفيتيز قليله جدا. ان احنا نكمل في الاكتيفيتي دي اعتقد ان هيفيدنا كلنا، بس مش بس هيفيدنا كاشخاص، هيفيدنا كشركات، هيفيدنا احنا شخصيا كمايكروسوفت. تاني ان هو كمان هيفيد اللوكال سوفت وير ايكونومي، او كل الشغل اللي بيتعمل في البلد حوالين احنا امتى يبقى عندنا صناعه سوفت وير حقيقيه في البلد. فاتمنى ان احنا نكمل ونكتر، وكل مجموعه عندها استعداد انها تعمل يوزر جروب ويبقى لها اجتماعات بصوره دوريه تتكلم على تكنولوجي، هي كمان تعمل حاجه زي كده، تعمل اكتيفيتي زي كده. الاكتيفيتيز دي محتاجه تزيد قوي عندنا في البلد، واتمنى ان اهم حاجه في الموضوع ده فكره الاستمراريه. فالاستمراريه انا قلت موضوع ان احنا نبسط الامور على نفسنا، يعني زي ما ريمون عمل النهارده كلمني وقال لي احنا عاملين يوزر جروب وانا بعرف ستيفن وعزمته وهو ستيفن جاي، وكل اللي محتاجينه من مايكروسوفت محتاجين بس المكان من مايكروسوفت وانا هتولى الباقي. الحاجه اللي عايز اطلبها من حضراتكم ان انتوا تساعدوا ريمون والدوت نتورك يوزر جروب بان انتوا تكملوا معاهم، يعني تدوهم فرصه في سيشن واثنين وثلاثه، سواء السيشن دي كانت كويسه او كانت مش كويسه قوي، ان انتوا تشجعوهم ان هم يكملوا. ما اعتقدش ان هم كل مره هيبقى عندهم الامكانيه ان هم يجيبوا اكسترنال سبيكر او سبيكر على مستوى عالي قوي زي النهارده، ولكن اعتقد ان المهم ان احنا نشجعهم. والحاجه الثانيه مهم جدا ان احنا نديهم فيدباك نقول لهم والله يا جماعه انتوا هايلين، يا ريت تكملوا، انتوا بتساعدونا، انتوا كده بتعلمونا حاجات كتير. ممكن نديهم فيدباك يا جماعه انتوا ماشيين في سكه غلط، البرزنتيشن بتاعتكم المفروض تبقى مختلفه شويه، التكنولوجي المفروض تبقى مختلفه. فاعتقد ان انتوا تشجعوهم وتكملوا معاهم وتدوهم فيدباك، دي هتبقى حاجه كويسه قوي. انا ما كنتش متخيل العدد ده، واعتقد ان مايكروسوفت دي حاجه تشرفنا وتسعدنا ان احنا نهوست الاكتيفيتيز دي على طول عندنا. يعني لو عايزين الميتنج ده بيتكرر عندنا كل شهر بالتنظيم مع دوت نتورك يوزر جروب، اتمنى يعني اعتقد ان دي حاجه تشرفنا ونقدر نكمل فيها معاكم طول الوقت. فيا ريت برضه لو انتوا ناويين تكملوا تقولوا الكلام ده ريمون والتيم بتاع دوت نتورك يوزر جروب، ونستمر في الاكتيفيتيز دي مع بعض. واخيرا برضه بشكركم تاني على وقتكم وعلى ان انتوا جيتوا، واتمنى ان السيشنز تبقى مفيده جدا النهارده. يعني شكرا.
معلش جدا 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 على التاخير، احنا ما كناش متخيلين الموضوع هيبقى صعب قوي كده اكشلي. اولا ميرسي قوي ان انتوا جيتوا الوقت متاخر واحنا متاخر واحنا راجعين، يعني اكشلي احنا كنا متوقعين ماكس 50 واحد، فانتوا جيتوا 3 اضعاف اكتر. فيعني يا ريت تسقفوا لروحكم الاول ان انتوا عملتوا حاجه جميله جدا جدا جدا. اقول حاجه بس سريعه. اكشلي الفكره اصلا كانت فكره ستيفن، فكره اليوزر جروب.
I speak Arabic. Keep going.
Okay. I keep forgetting that. It's okay. هما كان عندهم يوزر جروب في نيويورك، وهم قالوا الموضوع ده فشجعونا فيه كتير. فلما جينا كلمنا واحد هنا لقينا الموضوع برضو كان very interested، هما كانوا مبسوطين قوي بالموضوع ده. Actually مش هي بس just انا نقلت الفكره، انا ما عملتش حاجه يعني. Actually اللي عمل كل حاجه النهارده كان التيم بتاعي يعني، فاللي احنا زقفنا لهم اوريدي فخلاص يعني. احنا هنعمل حاجه صغيره كده. احنا الفكره اصلا ان احنا نقعد نعمل بيزيكلي الدنيا كلها، وهنعمل ايفنت مره كل شهر. انتوا ورا سامعيني ولا؟ اكشلي احنا اهم حاجه زي كان واحد قال ان احنا عايزين نبقى كونتينيوس، مش عايزين نقف. هم اكشلي عندهم يوزر جروب بقالهم حوالي 5 سنين او 6 سنين حاجه زي كده، ما وقفوش ابدا. فده وحده تارجت لينا ان احنا نوصل لحاجه زي كده. التارجت اصلا ان احنا نعمل حاجه تبقى زي ريزورت لينا كلنا، ان احنا نقدر نتجمع ونعمل حاجه جديده والناس كلها تساعد بعض. مش كلام كتير ولا حاجه، بس هي اكشلي لو عرفنا ان كل شهر عرفنا ننظم ايفنت زي ده، اعتقد ده هيبقى مور ذان انف ان احنا نعمل حاجه زي كده. انا معايا اتنين فورم انتوا خدتوهم تقريبا كلكم، في اللي هي الريجستريشن فورم والايفالويشن. الريجستريشن دي هناخد الديتيلز دي ونحطها عندنا على اليوزر جروب بتاعت الفيسبوك وبتاعت الياهو وبتاعت السايت، عشان خاطر بعد كده الايفنتس بتاع كل شهر هنبقى مع بعض، ولو في ميتنجز او في اي حاجه نبقى مع بعض. والايفالويشن فيه اسئله حاجات محتاجين نعرفها، انتوا هتفضلوا ايه؟ يعني هتفضلوا نعمل الكلام ده مره كل شهر، مره كل شهرين، هنعمل 2 3 سيشنز في الايفنت، سيشن واحده. ايه رايكم في السبيكر؟ اكيد وحش طبعا، انتوا عارفين السبيكر از باد يو نو.
If I'm a bad speaker, just my name is Ramon.
بس فعايزين نقعد نعمل الحاجات دي ونشوف الدنيا هتبقى ماشيه عامله ازاي. الوقت هيبقى مناسب ليكم امتى؟ في يوم اجازه، في يوم شغل، الصبح ولا بالليل؟ الدنيا هتبقى ماشيه عامله ازاي؟ تحبوا نعمله هنا في مايكروسوفت، ولا مثلا مايكروسوفت ممكن تساعدنا ان احنا نعمله في حاجه مثلا مكان وسط البلد اقرب للمدينه شويه؟ فليتس سي الموضوع ده كله يعني. احنا اصلا متاخرين جدا، فانا مش هاخد منكم وقت اكتر من كده، مع اني اكيد احب اتكلم قدام الناس دي كلها. فانا هسيب مفيش مايك، هسيبه لستيفن اني واي، وهو بقى يبتدي السيشن الانترستنج دي، عشان السيشن حلو قوي هتستمتعوا بيها يعني. اوكي ثانكس شباب.
All me?
Yeah. All right.
Those of you standing in the back, there's a couple spots over here if you want to sit on the floor, or maybe just kind of on the sides. Anyone have like empty space next to them? Raise their hand so someone can sit down. There's an empty seat here. Just kind of sit up on the sides. How's everyone going? How's the traffic? Fine. So
Don't even start.
we were driving, and Ramon Oh good, Ramon's not here, I can make fun of him. Ramon's on the phone with his girlfriend. Blah, 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 blah. And Rick is driving the car, and he's like, Ramon, I don't speak Arabic, but I speak enough universal language to understand what was going on. Ramon, is this the turn? Is this the turn? La 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 la. You hang up first. No, you hang up first. So we go 500 meters past the turn. 500 meters past the turn. The bus, who was on the bus that saw us make the wrong turn? Right. So the bus goes the right turn. So the driver, Rick, decides to go in reverse down the highway. I make the mistake of looking out the back window of all the cars coming at us. And I said, ooh, maybe this is what my mother warned me about. Okay, well, I'm glad everyone's here. Welcome. It's great to have the meeting today. And what I'm going to do is, we have two kind of sessions to talk about. So we'll have a quick overview of SQL Server 2008. We'll go between maybe 15 minutes and 30 minutes maximum. And then we'll give a break. And everyone can go use the washroom, get some water. But then we'll start 15 minutes and network. And then 15 minutes after that break, we'll begin the design pattern session. And that session we'll talk about ASP.NET design patterns, and particularly design patterns for a database. So that's all we'll do. And let me ask this question. Has anyone here seen me speak before? All right, so then we don't care who I am. So what I will say is I stole all this material from Microsoft. So what I did is I went through all the tech ed sessions, and I grabbed all their slides and all the demos, and well, actually, no, I wrote the demos, but I grabbed all the slides. And what happens is Microsoft has given a lot of live meetings when the betas have been released, which you all can subscribe to. And so I learned how to do a lot of this watching the live meetings, so you can as well. So, without any further ado, let's get going. So, we'll look at what SQL Server 2008's design goals are from a perspective of you, the developer. We're not going to really talk too much about what an IT administrator cares about with SQL Server. We're going to talk more about a developer. How many people here are writing code? Wow, lights went out. How many people here crawl under the desks and put wires together? You know, geeky IT people. Okay, a couple people. You write code too, though? So we're going to look at, since almost 99% of the room are software developers, we're going to look at the new features from the perspective of a developer. What's funny is when people ask me what's new in SQL Server 2008, a lot of the features are geared towards administration, which is performance and scalability. I'll talk very briefly about them, but everything will have a developer spin. So the first thing to think about is the world has changed. I was just talking about this today with a bunch of people. You know, we're sitting here. I was sitting here. My business partner is here with me somewhere in the room. I can't find him in the sea of people. And he's not technical, so he's going to be really bored in about 5 minutes. However, I said to him, I said, we're here in Egypt. He's talking to a customer in Europe. I was talking to someone back in New York. And we're with Ramon in the office. And I'm like, this is so amazing. I mean, you know, the world today, we can just work anywhere. And the consequence of that, though, is that there's a tremendous amount of data. And data has exploded just in the last 5 years. How much data is now electronic compared to a long time ago. I know the screen is very small, so I'll try to use the screen as a reference and maybe do more talking than showing than normal. But I will get to some demos through the course of the evening. So the goal of SQL Server 2008 is really put into 4 categories. The first one is an enterprise data category. And what that means is the stuff we don't care about for the administrators. Really great stuff. Like, for example, ever want to keep your computer running and put in a new processor? You could do that with SQL Server 2008. Hot swappable processors. hot swappable memory, hot swappable RAID arrays. This is stuff that might be boring to us as developers, but really makes the system scalable insofar as having 24/7 uptime. So Microsoft's done a really good job on the enterprise data platform where the database can hold tremendous amounts of data and actually keep that data online for as long as possible. Then there's beyond relational. There's some new data types, the spatial relationship data types. There are some data types dealing with XML and date time. So those data types go beyond relational. And then there's dynamic development, enhancements to T-SQL. Some really cool things that we can do with T-SQL today that we were not able to do just a short time ago. And lastly, this one is poorly named, but pervasive insight. And what that is a rev of SQL Server reporting services, SQL Server analysis services, all the business intelligence, all of the features that we know on the business intelligence side have been tremendously upgraded. So here's all the new features. Can you read that in the back? We're going to talk about all of them. Who has to be home by 10 o'clock tonight? All right, so by 10 o'clock we'll get down to here, maybe. Now this is the Microsoft marketing slide. We don't care about that. So we're going to talk about it. Is Wabi in the room? All right, so a few things on the enterprise side is, as I told you, the hot pluggable CPUs, which is really good. So anyone here using third-party compression software for database backups, like Redgate, SQL Redgate? 3 people? Who here is satisfied with the size and compression speeds of their SQL backups? This really is developed. Who takes a backup? Okay. Developers. Got it. All right, developers, repeat after me. I will go home and back up my database before I go to bed. 1, 2, 3.
I go
home and back up my database before I go to bed. I don't believe you. This is what drives me insane about developers. I shouldn't go down the road because I'm a developer too. But backups, very important. So if you were taking backups, you would notice that they are very, very slow. And third-party compression software will back up a database 10 times smaller than a SQL Server native backup. So SQL Server 2008 will drastically improve the backup compression. They also allow you to start selecting into backups, okay, and doing some fancy things like that. There's a lot of I was just making fun of Microsoft, I'm sorry. I'll wait till you leave again. I'll be good until you go out. So there's also some failover transparency. So when you do mirroring of the databases, actually have a highly available environment very, very easy. So the other thing is that Microsoft has worked really hard on making your queries behave very predictable insofar as the query plan. How many developers have ever looked at a show plan? You don't count. You're not a developer. You're a DBA. How many DBAs are in the room? Just the trader. 2 DBAs in the room. Good, because I make fun of DBAs all the time. So, what happens is you're now going to have the ability to look. I got a better question. Who writes queries for their SQL Server, puts them onto their web page, and then have users complain that it's slow? Oh, yeah, more. Come on, more. Okay. How do you debug that? Someone. Not you. SQL Profiler. What else? SQL Tuning Wizard. I let you answer. Data Tuning Wizard. Right? No one says anything about show plan. Right? So what happens is we look at the actual execution plan of the queries, much more predictable in SQL Server 2008 than in 2005. And lastly, does anyone have this problem? Does anyone have a user who is a little Stupid. Kind of like maybe the manager, right? Oh, here we go. Whose manager likes to run management reports that have lots of summary group bys in the middle of your transaction processing? Who is a manager that does that? Only 10% of the room? I'm surprised. Well, here's the cool thing. In SQL Server 2008, you have a resource governor where you can actually programmatically limit people's use of the operating system, of the actual operating system and of the actual queries that they run. So you can have the resource governor say, I give higher priority to the database writes. Transactions make us money, right? Database reads don't make us money. Database writes make us money. That's why we pay so much attention to the disk, right?
What do you mean by limit?
What do I mean by limit? The question is, what do I mean by a limit? What I mean is, we will not allow certain queries to run if they're going to interfere. If a query is going to be predicted as being a long-running query, kind of like select star from table of 1 billion rows, and you're trying to do a transaction. So if it's serialized, your transaction is going to be blocked, potentially for minutes. So what will happen is your resource governor can give priority to your transactions and give less of a priority to the actual running query. You can also limit it to say the query will time out after a certain amount of time and things like that. So these are mostly IT-focused things, a little less developer, but they make our life as developers much easier by actually allowing that performance enhancements. So in SQL Server 2005, resource management was done with a single resource pool. So what that means is the operating system allocated memory to SQL Server with one resource. Okay? It was multi-threaded, but you could only say, as a whole, to this SQL Server, here is how I'm going to manage my resources. When I say resources, I mean memory and threads, CPU cycles. So if you have a quad dual core, forget dual core, you have a quad core Xeon machine. SQL Server thinks it's 16 processors, right? You have 64-bit Windows, 64-bit SQL Server, you have 50 gigabytes of RAM. How do you allocate that across the multiple database servers on that database? You can't. You cannot isolate it. You can only make settings on a global level. Meaning is allowing query parallelism. Does everyone know what query parallelism is? Right? You can, which means, for those of you that don't know, you can run a query, select star from table, and SQL Server will actually, depending on your memory and depending on how many processors you have, will try to execute the query twice, and the faster one wins. Great for performance if you have 16 clocks, right? So how do I allocate that? So what will happen is SQL Server 2008 gives us a resource governor. It allows us to differentiate workloads based on a connection property. So you can change your connection string in your web config file. And you can give that higher priority and make that a resource pool. Meaning this is the website. Give this high priority. Your SQL Server reporting services have a different connection string. Meaning you would put that actual token in your connection string, give that a different priority. You can dynamically change the priority based on the time of day, based on the workload of the server. So you can even, this is my personal favorite, you can even change the priority based on the logged in user. You know that user you don't like in the other department? Put them at the end of the queue. They'll stop asking you questions there. So what's interesting is this is what it would look like in Enterprise Manager. Dating myself. What do they call it now? SQL Workbench. What's the marketing term? So the operating system, did I sound funny here? I can hear myself twice when I speak here. The operating system will give a notification back to you telling you that a particular resource is underutilized, overutilized. If it's overutilized, it'll give you a warning and say the workload in this particular case, the OLTP workload is high. That means you're running a website and a lot of people are buying things. And it's really, really slow because the database is choking. So you can dynamically allocate more CPU, more memory, more threads to that process. If you have a 4-processor machine and those processors are quad-core, SQL Server thinks you have 16 processors. You're sharing those 16 processors with Windows, with anything else you have on that machine, like LimeWire. So what you could do is you could dynamically tell SQL Server, I want these 4 processors only to work on the OLTP. Forget about the admin tasks and the backups. Give that 1 processor. Let it go slow. I don't care. So you could dynamically look, because SQL Server will tell you how things are performing. So the nice thing about this is you can then split up pools, and you can create an application pool and dynamically allocate processors to the actual pools themselves, and it will tell you what the CPU maximizations are. So you can say create pool 1 for applications, create pool 2, for something else, and take it from there. Okay, so the resource governor will then dynamically put the application that's busy into that resource pool. So developers don't care about that too much, but the nice thing about that is you're going to have the ability to then turn around and talk to your DBA, to talk to your administrators, and plan for that in your applications. So let's take a look at some of the beyond relational types of data types. So there's some new data types, and I always love when a new version of SQL Server rolls around because there's always some new data types. 4 or 5 years ago we got the XML data type, and we were supposed to get some other, what? SQL Server 2005, right? So there's some new data types. There's a file stream data type. You can see what that's good for, right? We're being asked more and more to deal with things on the operating system. In essence, you can actually write your own operating system and use SQL Server as your file system. You could. That'd be a good, any students here could make that a good senior project. Any students here who want Microsoft to give them a lot of money, that'd be a good project. Right? Microsoft's been trying to figure that out for years. If someone figures that out in their senior project, you'd be rich. There's now integrated full text search. Okay, so it's no longer a separate service. It's integrated right in. You have sparse columns, the spatial data types. You can have filtered indexes. And you can have a whole amount of hierarchical data, which is really cool. So what you could do is you could go in and actually define hierarchies relationally the way you would normally do in XML. And lastly, there is finally a working date and a working time data type. So the date data type and the time data type will actually go in and measure date and time to the millisecond, if need be. Okay? Didn't do that in the past. It pretended to do that in the past. And as we all know, SQL Server 2005, what's the first year you can add data to? December 30th, 1756. That's the beginning of time for SQL Server. Right? But you guys live in Egypt. You're dealing with things that are 4,000 years old. What if you're, seriously, what if you work for the Cairo Museum and you have to model artifacts in the museum? Things come from 4,000 years old. SQL Server dates can't handle that, right? Now they can. SQL Server dates now span millennia that go over and over. It's a full 64-bit column. So there's also spatial data to deal with geographic geometric figures. So you can actually put polynomials, binomials. You can actually put polygons into a SQL Server data type. And this is really great for longitude and latitude, location-aware things. So you can actually map things out on a map. I had a developer at our office gave me a demo of this yesterday. I don't have the demo. And it's absolutely awesome. He integrated it with Virtual Earth. So you can actually store longitude and latitudes as a spatial relationship data type. And then what you do is they have methods